As the world knows, there is an information war being waged, and I unfortunately have been given a central role in this information war, conducted mainly by the US establishment, and also as client states to the US. The UK and the Danish establishments are also playing an integral role in this information war. In this response, I'm going to address the situation. I'm also going to address issues which I normally, as a habit, try to stay clear of, despite having an educated opinion on the matters. Firstly, the program's propaganda campaigns against me personally has yet again reached new heights or lows. Either way, the intensification of the psychological operations has reached new extremes. Over the last days, I have been betrayed as some kind of sexually confused and deprived individual who, after their account, engages in all sorts of bizarre sexual depravity. This line in their narrative has been propagandized throughout the world, both via the program and normal media, fairly overtly as well, which is obviously done because they are seeking a response from me, which they intend to use against me if possible. As I have stated before, it's part of their modus operandi to have these outrageous propaganda campaigns against me, but will just as easily deny the existence of them, despite these information campaigns being ongoing at the minute when they are being denied. And this is a fact that needs to be taken into consideration every time I utter a word. The program is a multifaceted intelligence operation conducted, as stated above, principally by the American government. I will now introduce other aspects of this multinational and multifaceted intelligence operation. Secondly, the program has obviously not been implemented for the sole purpose of waging information warfare on me. Rather, I am not by choice but by force a part of the official pretext for having it running and broadcasting to much of the world. However, the purposes behind this operation are multifaceted and in some instances complex. One of the principal objectives with the program is to indoctrinate the recipients of the program's propaganda to all the new radical initiatives which have and are being implemented into societies via the program, by gradually and steadily introducing more and more radical initiatives under the pretext of the program. Moreover, through this method, the people who are recipients are undergoing a normalization without even knowing or realizing the overall implications of the initiatives which are being implemented arbitrarily. And you should know by now that these initiatives will be never ending, and furthermore, the outrageousness and the radicalness of each one will become worse for every new one that gets implemented. The same goes for the propaganda stories that are broadcasted as being authentic, while in reality the majority of the propaganda that is propagated through the program is fabricated, moreover created to achieve a desired effect or outcome. Furthermore, many times these fabricated propaganda narratives will be self-evident to any serious and critical thinking person because of what they are trying to achieve through these propaganda narratives. Unfortunately, the majority of the recipients are not seriously and critically thinking people, and that's without taking into consideration that people in general are being propagandized throughout their daily lives to believe anything that is put out there, as long as it is from a well-established media outlet. You know, your CNNs and BBCs and so on. And in the instance of the program's direct propaganda, it is also a well-established fact that the US and UK and Danish establishments are officially behind these broadcasts. And because these are well-established governments who sway influence and have a certain amount of faith in them by their populations, the majority will have a tendency to believe whatever is put out there by their respective governments, without question. So you see, all these years where the program has been running, our respective governments have been systematically and increasingly deceiving and manipulating their populations in unfathomable ways to suit their own interests and agendas, which always, as a matter of principle, are contrary to the interests of the majorities, which is the reason why governments in general subject their populations to propaganda. And in the case of the program and the 21st century, this is being done across borders and continents. Moreover, by a few hegemonic establishments who are deciding what initiatives are going to be implemented on a global level. The word sovereignty and respectively democratic choices are gone with the wind, which is another aspect that explains why the program has been implemented, making these arbitrary transitions over to a global union of sorts easier for the powers that be. The majority of the populations who are recipients to the program have come to accept whatever is put out over the program as being fact, especially if it's framed and regarding me personally as a carrier of the given narrative. A concrete example of the program's multifacetedness would be the American election 2016, in which the Democrats, Hillary Clinton's side, is using the program and the propaganda campaigns against me against Donald Trump, who is representing the Republicans by obfuscating and intertwining the two different campaigns into one, essentially labeling Donald Trump with the program's propaganda.
I see with my own eyes the damage Donald Trump does when he talks about women and how they look. As the first female president, how would you undo some of that damage and help girls understand that they are so much more than just what they look like?
My opponent insulted Miss Universe. I mean, how do you get more acclaimed than that? But it wasn't good enough. So we can't take any of this seriously anymore. We need to laugh at it. We need to refute it. We need to ignore it. And we need to stand up to it. And especially the bullying. There are too many young women online who are being bullied about how they look and being shamed and mistreated.
It is also self-evident that it is Barack Obama's White House which officially would be the arbiters of the program. Furthermore, Barack Obama's presidential term began in 2008, and the program was not implemented publicly until 2009. So Barack's term extends the program's lifespan, this being interesting as it is predominantly the Democratic side using the program's propaganda against the Republican nominee. Furthermore, it's fairly clear to see that the timing and the material of the latest hit piece that has been propagandized over the last few days regarding my supposedly deprived sexual tendencies coincides with the Donald Trump leak of a personal conversation in which he describes his sexual attraction to good-looking women in a profound and negative way. This whole situation is a really good indicium that the Democrat Barack Obama is using his brainchild, aka the program, against his and Hillary's political opponent, Donald Trump.
Well, it's just a long list. And you just repeat it over and over again. All right. And so that your only agenda is negative. And you just make up facts. So if 99% of scientists say, you know, the planet's getting warmer and this is something you should worry about, and then you bring a snowball into the Senate chambers and say it was snowing outside, so you must be wrong, using that as evidence to dispute scientists. That over time, what happens is that you produce a nominee who's all about obstruction and insults and makes up his own facts. Now, I don't think that's how the majority of Republicans think, but this is the habits that you get into that create this kind of nominee. And now you find a situation in which the guy says stuff that nobody would find tolerable if they were applying for a job at 7-Eleven. Or I don't know what job, if you were kind of vetting somebody for a job and then you heard what somebody said on tape about women, set aside what they were saying about that stuff, that you would hire that person for that job. And the fact that now you've got people saying, well, we strongly disapprove. We really disagree. We find those comments disgusting. But we're still endorsing him. We still think he should be president. That doesn't make sense to me. Now, I hear then some people saying, well, I'm a Christian and so I'm all about forgiveness because nobody's perfect. Well, that is true. I'm certainly not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I too believe in forgiveness and redemption, but that doesn't mean I'm going to elect the person president. You know, if somebody does something terrible or shows themselves to be unqualified for an office, I can forgive them, I suppose, if they're sincere about it, but I don't want them necessarily leading the country, right? So you can't have it both ways here. You can't repeatedly denounce what is said by someone and then say, but I'm still going to endorse them to be the most powerful person on the planet and to put them in charge. So I just wanted to make that point because there are still a number of Republican elected officials, some of whom I know and I'm sure are embarrassed and say, wow, that was a really terrible thing he said, but they can't bring themselves to say, I can't endorse this guy. And by the way, why did it take so long for some of them to finally do walk away? I mean, we saw this coming. He's been saying really bad stuff for a while now. What did you think? He was just going to transform himself? I mean, I'm 55, and it's hard for me to change. I know at 70 it's going to be harder. Anyway, I wanted to make that point.
There can be no doubt that this latest hit piece on me has been put together at this juncture to have the most impact on the electorate by fabricating a propaganda narrative which coincides with Hillary's campaign against Donald Trump. And therefore the two campaigns can and has been intertwined into one, thereby creating more ammunition to be used against the Republican nominee, while I at the same time am being ridiculed and discredited, which is nothing new except the outrageousness of this latest campaign. And another thing to note is that this sort of information warfare approach also has other aspects which are more complex and have to do with that the US establishment are pulling the program into the election because that also serves their interests on other fronts. Because the program and my situation is getting blown so much out of proportion that no one, meaning national courts, the European Court of Human Rights, human rights NGOs and the like will most likely never expedite any complaints or claims from me or any other concerning human rights violations, despite these campaigns against me are flagrantly violating not only my personal human rights, moreover the principle and spirit of human rights in accordance with both the European Convention on Human Rights and the Universal Declaration on Human Rights are directly being undermined in egregious ways by the US establishment. One should also keep in mind every time there is an extensive propaganda campaign, it also serves as a deflecting mechanism. In this instance, I want to draw their attention to all the negative attention the Clintons had on them after the second presidential debate, in which Donald Trump highlighted some of the real history of the Clintons, specifically the accusations raised against Bill Clinton for raping several women and the well-known and profound promiscuous tendencies of Bill Clinton's, which Hillary apparently has done everything to sweep under the carpet in very nasty ways towards the victims of her husband, the former President of America. And that's without mentioning the other elephant in the room, which is the Lolita Express and Epstein, which is another issue which ought to raise serious questions towards these characters, who, if you do your research, are surrounded in scandals which never see the light of day thanks to the mainstream medias who operates as extensions to the establishments which they serve unquestionably. These are just some of the multifaceted aspects of the program. Now going back to my particular situation where my identity is being abused and moreover where I am serving as a pretext for these establishments who in effect have declared me as an enemy combatant of sorts and thereby depriving me of most of my legal and human rights. Furthermore, using the public around me as proxies to pursue and advance their objectives towards me. This also serves as an indoctrination scheme because people day in and day out are following the program's news, for a lack of a better word. So as all things, it becomes normal after a while, despite the program being anything but. Nonetheless, that is what is occurring, like it or not. And the establishments responsible certainly know this, which is why their initiatives are specifically designed to perpetuate and extend their power and influences over the general populations, and they are capitalizing greatly. And because I have managed to stay alive and not to mention sane, despite everything I have been put through all these years, and not only that, I have also managed, under these circumstances, to advance and evolve in life to such an extent that I pose a significant difficulty for these establishments, and I am obviously not speaking physically or financially. However, legally I am a thorn in their side because of the fact I haven't done anything wrong, and it has been so long since I have done anything criminal that my criminal record is completely clean, and has been so for the last 2 years. Despite this being a well-established fact, they still managed year after year to perpetuate their accusations and charges against me publicly, without ever raising charges against me for any of their many claims and charges, which they claim against me on a daily basis. One should surely realize that we are talking about the hegemonic superpower of the world, whom is the arbiter of the program, which equates to the full weight of not only the American government, but also the British and Danish government in collaboration. You can be certain that these forces have and are still trying to come up with ways in which they can raise criminal charges against me for something or other. The problem is I haven't done anything criminally wrong, which as it happens worsens my personal situation significantly. Because instead of being prosecuted for something benign like assault or drug charges, I am instead persecuted by these forces like no one has ever seen before. This set of circumstances is many times worse than being imprisoned and losing one's liberties for a defined amount of time. This predicament which I find myself in has condemned me arbitrarily to live in complete isolation, hated and despised, and moreover persecuted and harassed by everyone and every institution, without ever being officially accused or charged for anything. Instead, I'm being labelled and character assassinated on a daily basis, while my fellow citizens and local governments are used as proxies against me to have me set up to be institutionalized to a mental institution, primarily by subjecting me to a plethora of gaslighting and provocateur techniques, all in the hopes that I will have some harsh reaction which will be deemed threatening or otherwise unacceptable, giving the Danish government some justification to have me sectioned under false and staged pretences, and by extension also legally succeeding in having me deemed incompetent to represent my own legal interests, especially now more than ever because I have ongoing legal cases, one of which there has been set a date of the 4th of January 2017. Furthermore, I am representing myself and my own interests, which is a major step which the Danish government has been denying me since 2014 in the post-Denmark case. Furthermore, the second case is at a junction now where the District Court of Esbjerg is going to have to respond to questions that I have raised to the court regarding my legal certainty and furthermore my rights to an independent and impartial tribunal, which under these circumstances in regards to the programme and all that entails is irreconcilable with the European Convention on Human Rights, not to mention the principles of rule of law, which puts me in a very precarious and dangerous situation where anything can happen at any time, and one thing is for certain, many attempts will be made between now and the 4th of January 2017 to have me either institutionalized, imprisoned or even killed, though I do not reckon the latter will be a big concern, as that solution would ruin the continuation of the programme as it is implemented now, and I do not see the US establishment turning off the programme anytime soon, as they are the main benefactors of it.